I've been using FlutterFlow for over 3 years, and during that time, I've tested other no-code and low-code tools, experimented with AI-assisted coding, and even built fairly complex apps alongside with Claude Code. And in fact, I'm actually building one right now that I can't wait to share with all of you. But at some point, I settled on FlutterFlow as my go-to no-code tool. And the more I used it, the more I realize something very, very important. You see, coding tools are like fashion. Some people swear by Python, others live in JavaScript, and some stick with Swift, and a few are still hanging onto Ruby or even Perl, although I'm curious if such people really do exist. The point is, everyone's got their preferences, just like with clothing brands or styles. And this is especially crucial in the age of AI development that seemingly has a brand new tool every single week without fail, but more on that in just a moment. So, how do you navigate this chaos of today's no-code world? Well, it's actually a lot easier than you think. Now, back when I worked as a software developer, people often asked me, what programming language should I learn? Python, JavaScript, or Swift? And just the other day, my barber asked me the same exact question. He's actually thinking about learning Python. And my answer was always the same and has remained the same up to this day. A language is just a tool. You pick the one that gets the job done. I mean, look, I would never build an API endpoint in assembly language. I also wouldn't use Python for a hardware driver. And I certainly would never try to speak Swahili in Spain or speak Spanish in Indonesia, right? Context matters a lot. Some tools just vibe better with you. Personally, I like Python. I'm also very comfortable with JavaScript since I use it almost everywhere now. Ruby and Perl, not really my thing. The point is, languages and tools are neutral. They exist to take you from point A to point B. Nothing more, nothing less. And that's exactly how you should view no-code tools and app builders. Their purpose is to take you from an idea to a polished piece of software that helps users achieve something meaningful. So if Tool A can do that and you enjoy using it, then Tool A is the right choice for you. For me personally, that tool is FlutterFlow. It's not just that I enjoy working with it, it's that I know 100% that I can build pretty much anything I want with it. No limits. And no, that's definitely not an exaggeration. Now, you might be thinking at this point, but what about AI? Can't you just ask it to build your app? Well, here's the thing. AI is revolutionary. There's no doubt about that. It can help you speed things up, generate boilerplate code, and even get you from zero to a functional prototype faster than ever before. And I'm speaking from experience. But here's the problem. Once things go wrong, and they will, trust me, or once you need to maintain and extend the app, things get messy really, really quickly. Editing or scaling an AI generated app is tough. The code is often inconsistent, and making changes over time without a senior developer becomes painful. And so that's why for most apps, I prefer and recommend a UI-driven builder like FlutterFlow. It's not just about speed, it's about long-term maintainability. Sure, you can whip out a quick demo with AI, but if you want to build a serious production app that you can update, grow, and maintain over the years, you need a structured tool like FlutterFlow. So in today's video, I want to talk about the different types of apps that you can build with FlutterFlow. We'll look at 5 main categories, from the simplest apps all the way to enterprise level builds. And for each type, I'll cover 3 main things. Number 1, complexity, how challenging it is to build. Number 2, screens, the basic set of pages you expect the app to have. And number three, the secret sauce. And this is the workflows, the conditions, the logic that turn your static screens into a real app. When you build apps, you can think of it as three layers. The UI, and this is what the user sees and what they interact with, the database where your data lives, and the logic, what acts on the user's intent to solve real problems. Because at the end of the day, anyone can throw together screens. What matters is the logic, the invisible glue that makes the app actually work, that makes the app feel magical. So, whenever you build, ask yourself two main questions. Number one, what's the flow of the app? How will the user navigate it? And number two, what's the secret sauce and how complex it is to implement? Once you can answer those questions, you're already halfway done, and I would say even more than halfway. Now, the types of apps that I want to cover in this video are going to be simple single page apps. So these are lightweight apps with 1 to 2 screens, perfect for starters like to-do lists, converters, or trackers. Consumer apps, and these are everyday apps like food delivery, dating, Airbnb, Uber style booking with real-time updates and multi-role logic. Multi-tenant apps. These are SaaS-style platforms where multiple companies or organizations can share the same app but have isolated data. Niche apps with heavy integrations, right? Apps powered by APIs and third-party services, telemedicine, AI assistants, travel planners. And finally, complex enterprise level apps. And these are large scale internal or industry apps with dozens of screens, advanced workflows, and real-time orchestration. All right, so here I am in FlutterFlow, and let me show you all the different types of apps that you can build very, very quickly and easily. So the first app that I want to focus on is your quintessential one-page app. So this could be like a currency converter, something like My To-Dos, a ton of other apps that only need one page, right? And this is very, very easy to do. You just create one page, and I like to use templates for this, right? So if you click on new page, you have all of these templates that you can use, right? And they're, categorized content, list, settings, e-commerce. So here you can just select a list. Now, when we talk about the logic or the secret sauce, well, this is what's going to be responsible for making the app work. And anytime the user clicks on anything, right? So if they click on here, we need to create an event, right? So let's say they want to mark this as done, right? Maybe this is a checkbox or something else. Well, you need to click here and you need to add an action. And when this is a list view, you'll get access to this action right here. And so all you need to do is modify the data that you're reading, because if you're displaying it on the page, FlutterFlow knows about it, has access to it, so it can easily update it, right? And so when we talk about the screens, it's just going to be one screen, very, very simple. But when we talk about the secret sauce, well, this is going to be here, right? It's just going to be action. So if I want to mark it as done, it's going to be here, and then it's going to appear here. If I want to revert it, well, I'm going to click here, and that's going to go back here. And so these two are going to be lists. This list is going to filter all the done items, and this list is going to filter all the not done items, right? So very, very simple UI and a very, very simple secret sauce, the logic, if you will, okay? The next type of app that I want to talk about is a type of app that you've probably been exposed to many, many times. And this is your typical consumer app, right? So think of Amazon, think of another app, and this is your typical consumer app, right? Think of Amazon, think of an e-commerce store, apps like that. They have multiple screens, but they're not too complex, right? They're more complex than this one screen app, but they're still fairly simple to do compared to more complex apps, right? So if I go to this folder over here, I have a bunch of pages, right? The first thing that we need to do is we need to support login, right? Typically with these consumer apps, you need to find out who the user is. You need to have the user create an account so that you can track who they are, because maybe they need to pay for something, or maybe you need to provide recommendations to them, or maybe you need to contact them, right? This is more involved in like a to-do app. which might be like a currency converter where you don't need to log in, right? It doesn't care who you are. And so here we have a login, we have a home, we have a detail, we have a checkout, and we have the profile. So let's go through them one by one, right? First, you need a login, and you can simply click over here and you can go into auth, and you're going to be, greeted with a bunch of these templates that you can use right away. Very, very cool. And once the user logs in, they're going to be redirected to their home screen. This is also a template, right? And if you go over here, typically a home screen is going to be a list of something, right? It's going to be either, maybe it's an e-commerce store, right? List of items, or like a food delivery kind of place, right? A list of food items, right? It's going to have a list of things the user needs to interact with, right? So we're going to go to this list over here, and you can select any kind of list that you want, or you can create your own, which is also awesome, okay? And so you can have this. Now, when the user clicks on an item, we need to redirect the user to the detail page. And here I have a random detail page that shows all the information about that specific item, right? About that specific list item, right? Because on the list item, we're not going to be listing all the details. That's reserved for the detail page, okay? And so on this detail page, you can list anything that you want. And very, very important is you want the user to take some action after they look at all this, right? This is your call to action. So this example, it's get tickets, but this could be something like buy now. It could be add to cart. It could be both, buy now and add to cart, right? I know Amazon has been experimenting with both options. So that's another thing that you can do. And so this is a simple detail page, and you can simply click on new page, go to content, and you're going to have all of these detail pages here that you can use, or you can build your own, or better yet, you can get one of these and modify it to your specific criteria, to your specific use case. Next, we have the checkout, right? So if you're supporting multi-cart, or even for one product, right, we need to get the user's information, right? We need to display the confirmation, maybe take in their credit card info. If you're connecting with Stripe, you're going to be, integrating with Stripe. You might want to do that as well here. So that is all very, very easy to do, this whole flow. Last but not least, we also have the profile page, right? This is where a user can click, they can see their orders, get notifications, modify their information, see their information, stuff like that, log out of their account, right? Very, very important, because otherwise you really can't log out anywhere, right? If they want to log out because they're giving the phone to somebody else, or it's not their phone, or they value security a lot, I really can't log out on none of these other pages, right? So that's typically done on the profile page. So another fairly simple use case that's very, very straightforward to build with FlutterFlow. FlutterFlow was designed to accomplish just that. Now, the next type of app that I want to talk about is a type of app that I've explored on this channel lately. And this is an important type of app that many of you will probably want to build. And this is a multi-tenant app. Okay, so what is the difference between a multi-tenant app and a regular app? Well, unlike a regular app where a user logs in and they have all of their info and they do whatever they want, they can purchase if it's an e-commerce store, etc. A multi-tenant app supports not multiple users, but multiple organizations that have their own data, that can do their own things, right? So an example could be something like a gym, a yoga studio, a teacher, a school, right? So let's say a gym, right? Let's say I run a gym. Well, it's my gym. So under me, I have various like fitness trainers, right? I have various trainers, and these trainers have classes, and in each class you have students, right? Now, I run that school, but you can have multiple people like me that run multiple schools, meaning that I run, one school, maybe I run a couple of schools, but then there's somebody else just like me who runs other schools, and they need that segregation because they need to see data pertaining to their own school, right? They cannot log in and see all the schools. Or a trainer or like a fitness coach cannot log in and see like all classes, right? It needs to be segregated or isolated by an entity, right? That's the difference between a multi-tenant app and a regular app, right? With multi-tenant apps, we're talking about chief entities, right? So The first, order of business is to define this chief entity, right? So in our example, if we are talking about an app that has, can manage multiple like gyms, fitness studios, yoga studios, what have you, that becomes an entity, right? And so you have various layers, right? You have multiple layers. And so when we're talking about a login, right, we have an admin login, but then we also might have an agent login, right? So what is an admin login? Well, if it's my school, I'm the admin, or somebody else I designate becomes an admin. What is an agent? Well, an agent could be a person that does something only in that organization. Okay, so somebody like a fitness trainer, a coach, a teacher, a professor, you name it, right? You name it. We're talking about multiple levels. And so with FlutterFlow, that is also fairly easy to do. The only thing that you need to keep track of is you need to lock your data, number one, at the database level, and you can easily do that with Superbase's row level security. And Superbase is a product that I highly recommend for pretty much any kind of app. So you can do it with Superbase row level security. And if you want to learn more, check out that video up there. And very, very important, you need to be able to lock it on the app level, right? So every screen, anytime you show data, you need to catch the ID. You need to make sure that it's only displaying it for the logged in user, right? And you know who the logged in user is? You can get their org ID, right? Because everything is going to be tied to an org ID. And you need to make sure that it's being displayed to the org ID. And that way you're not going to have issues, errors, or anything like that on your page, okay? And so multi-tenant apps are awesome. I had a bunch of videos. I have a bunch of videos on my channel, and you can definitely search for them. But it's also very, very easy to implement with FlutterFlow. Now, the next type of app that I want to talk about is a niche app that relies on heavy integrations. Okay, so maybe you're building an app for a hospital, or you're building an app for an insurance company, or you're building an app for a real estate company, right? Typically, these are not going to be self-contained apps. They're going to rely on heavy integration. And fortunately, that is also very, very easy to do with FlutterFlow, right? Because with FlutterFlow, it's very easy to have integrations. You can simply click on API calls. You can create your API calls here, and that will be able to, send data, receive data from your third-party integration. Another thing that you can do is you can use cloud functions, right? And this allows you to create functions that run on the server, okay? Because otherwise, everything that you do runs on the client, okay? So sometimes it's fine, right? Especially for like UI events. So if I click on something, right? So as I'm clicking, that, and I need to see an answer right away, right? Which is how UIs work. That's a UI thing, right? So with 99% of FlutterFlow, it's UI based. But other times you want something to run on the server. So like with APIs, you're accessing a remote server. With cloud functions, you're writing code that does something but runs on the server. It does not run on the client, right? So when the user is running your app, they are executing stuff right on their device, on their phone, on their tablet, on their PC, Mac, Chrome browser, etc., etc. But other times you need to have stuff that's stored on the server. Another really good use case for storing stuff on the server is if you want to store sensitive data, API keys, stuff like that. Because if you store it in FlutterFlow, it's going to be available on the client, right? You don't want that. You want to store stuff on the server. And so in this case, you want to make sure that you have some way of storing the data on the server. And that's going to be the case if you're building niche apps with integrations, because you'll have to send an API key and you'll have to get the user to authenticate and then get an API key and send that API key there and stuff like that. And so building niche apps with heavy integrations is also a non-issue when it comes to using FlutterFlow. And last but not least, I want to talk about building complex enterprise-ready apps, right? And these are going to be the kind of apps that are used by businesses. You're never going to be building this kind of app by yourself as a solo developer sitting in a coffee shop. This is going to be an app that's going to be used primarily by companies and bigger companies, right? And so these are going to be the apps that does maybe order management, order fulfillment, integration with large big commerce, big databases, stuff like that. And you can easily build an app like that in FlutterFlow as well, because that kind of app will need a UI. It will need a way for the user to access the app. It's also going to have deep integrations with backend systems, right? So you have your API stuff here. You also have custom code, so you can write custom actions which can do integration to your third-party systems. And last but not least, you can also use cloud functions, right? If you need to run some code server side, sensitive data, or if you're using an integration that's not supported by an API. So you need to connect, maybe it's a SOAP, a REST call that doesn't have an API endpoint, or maybe it's something special, proprietary, that doesn't have an API endpoint, right? Because there's a lot of systems that do not have an API endpoint, but you need to talk to them, right? And they have a proprietary way of kind of talking to them and accessing them. And so you can easily build these kinds of apps with FlutterFlow as well, because you can easily build the UI here and then do the integrations either using API, custom code, or cloud functions as well. FlutterFlow is a tool that allows you to build pretty much any kind of app that you want. It's all about taking the kind of problem that you're looking to solve, translating it into screens, figuring out the logic, figuring out the database, and I recommend just using Supabase unless you have another reason not to, and then figuring out the integration to third-party system. And that's pretty much it. You can build any app that you want, and it's going to be a lot easier to maintain than if you were to build an app using some other app builder or using AI code and all that, because you have your UI screens. You can easily modify that. You can change the settings. You can change how you want things to look, and you can update, maintain, extend your app as the time goes on.